My hands find nothing but empty space where the handrail used to be. Sparks jump across the void, the severed wiring spitting angry hisses. The acrid stench of burnt insulation assaults my nostrils. It's pure luck, blind and fickle, that I wasn't flung into the abyss along with the handrail. The emergency lighting is a muted yellow, painting the corridor in distorted shadows. My eyes strain, trying to piece together the fractured mosaic of the hallway. Bulkheads are twisted like children's clay. Floor panels bulge upwards. "Keller!" someone shouts through the muted drone of the klaxons. The voice barely registers. I'm too busy mapping out a detour around the collapsed floor section. "Keller, for God's sake, answer!" The voice is getting closer. A hand clamps down on my shoulder, the grip so forceful that pain cuts through the numbness. It's Charles, the chief engineer. I know his build even through the clumsy protective suit. The stubble on his jaw is perpetually at war with regulations. Even amidst catastrophe, I feel irritation. "You all right?" His voice is tight, the worry barely concealed beneath his usual gruffness. I manage a weak nod in response. Talking is a chore I don't want to expend energy on. He helps me scramble over the warped floor plates, and I cling to his steadying arm like a lifeline. "What in the seven hells was that?" I manage once I'm sure my voice won't fail me. "Don't know." There's an edge to Charles's voice. Fear battling with his ingrained pragmatism. "Labs took the brunt of it. Something in Sector C." Sector C. That's where Ericsson's team was tampering with dark matter, trying to wring a few more measly watts from that enigmatic abyss. My gut clenches. The arrogance of those researchers was a constant irritation, but I didn't wish this on them. "Casualties?" My voice comes out hoarse. "Haven't heard nothing yet. Comms are down, of course." Charles glances back over his shoulder. We've reached the junction leading to the central hub. "Let's head for the bridge. Someone's bound to have some idea of the mess we're in." The bridge ought to be a bastion of order, even in situations like this. It's where Captain Anders and his crew would be wresting control back from chaos. Instead, it's a scene ripped from a low-budget horror sim. Consoles spew sparks, holograms display corrupted data, useless drivel. The stench of burnt electronics clings to the air. "Sir!" someone yells. It's one of the junior navigators, Ryan, I think. I always mistake him for the comms officer. They both have that reedy build. He's clutching a data slate with cracked display. "Report, Ryan!" bellows Charles. Ryan swallows, visibly battling back a wave of nausea. "Life support. Readings are erratic." He jabs a finger at the screen. "Oxygen's dropping, sir. Scrubbers haven't kicked in." My voice rasps through the stifling confines of my helmet. "Ryan, where did the blast originate?" The navigator stumbles over the question, his face pasty in the emergency lights. "Sector C, sir. The containment labs." Ericsson and his lot. Damned fools. I feel my stomach twist, not with fear, but with a bitter kind of satisfaction. Serves them right for poking at things beyond their understanding. "Ryan, focus," barks Charles. "What caused it?" "Structural readings." "Did anything spike just before the blast?" Ryan swipes a shaking hand across the data slate. "No, sir. Everything seems nominal." His voice squeaks to a stop. "Nominal?" Charles scoffs. "Does this seem nominal to you?" He gestures wildly at the carnage, but something in Ryan's expression cuts through his bluster. I push past Charles and peer at the slate. He's right. Temperature readings, power fluctuations, even structural stress indicators, all eerily normal. "Sir, I don't get it," Ryan whispers. His voice cuts through the whine of failing systems. The bridge is devolving into a tomb before our eyes. The air is growing thin, a creeping coldness seeping into our bones. My mind races, a trapped animal searching for an escape I know doesn't exist. "Captain Anders," I finally managed to say, forcing control into my voice. "Where's the captain?" We all know the answer, but there's hope in pretending otherwise. A naive belief that the chain of command might offer salvation. Ryan stares at his boots and mumbles, He was in his quarters." A surge of anger cuts through me, almost potent enough to drown out the growing fear. Anders, so fastidious about protocol, was off duty. "Radio him," Charles snaps. "His comm must still be functional." Ryan shakes his head, his breath forming a shaky condensation on the visor. "Tried, sir. All channels are blocked. It's like—" He swallows, the word catching in his throat. "Like interference." Charles grunts, an acknowledgement, not an agreement. His gaze flicks towards the shattered viewports. Outside, the star, the ever-present, throbbing eye of the system, seems to pulse in a mocking rhythm. "I'm going to the captain's quarters," I say, the words almost alien to my own ears. My voice holds a clarity born out of desperation. "Keller." Charles's usually booming voice is barely above a whisper. "You're damn well staying on this bridge. We need those systems online." "Systems don't matter if we suffocate in the next 5 minutes," I retort. The old engineer opens his mouth to argue, then closes it again. He knows I'm right. "Fine," he spits out the word. "But take James with you. Can't have you wandering around alone in this mess." James, one of the security personnel. A mountain of muscle and obedience, but not the brightest bulb in the chandelier. Still, better than nothing. He's slouched near a ravaged console, eyes glassy under the harsh emergency lighting. "James!" Charles Bark jerks him to attention. "Keller needs backup. Captain's quarters, move!" The security man offers me a gruff nod and falls into step behind me. The silence in the corridor is punctuated only by the hiss of our failing respirators and the occasional groan of tortured metal. It is a soundscape of death. I try not to dwell on the fact that my own death warrant may very well be sealed within those quarters. The corridor outside Anders's quarters looks like someone took a hammer to reality itself. Panels are ripped apart, conduits spill their severed intestines across the floor. This destruction isn't just random chaos. It has a malevolent focus. "James, watch my back," I order, my words straining through the failing respirator. He grunts in acknowledgement, hefting the bulky pulse carbine in his meaty fists. I reach for the door control, expecting it to be non-functional like everything else, but the panel hisses open. A wave of dread comes over me. The door shouldn't be working. The quarters beyond are plunged into an unsettling gloom. What little light penetrates comes from the fractured viewport, casting jagged shadows across the room. Anders's body lies sprawled in the center, his limbs splayed at odd angles. My first thought is he's dead, a victim of the same force that ripped the station apart. Then he moves. A sharp jolt like a puppet pulled by an unseen cord. His head swivels towards us, eyes wide and unseeing. "Captain?" I say, my voice hesitant. For a horrible moment, the only answer is the whine of my respirator. Then Anders opens his mouth. It's my turn to recoil like a jerked puppet, the gasp lodged in my throat. It isn't speech that pours out of the captain, but a hissing static, a radio tuned to some dead frequency. "Anders, it's Keller. Can you hear me?" I try to inject authority into my voice, but it comes out weak. Something is deeply wrong here. His form twitches again, a series of jolts that ripple through his body. With a horrifying clarity, I realize I'm not looking at the captain anymore, not really. His body, it's just a shell, a crude instrument for something else. "James," I manage, but my command dies in my throat. James is frozen in place, staring at Anders with a dumbstruck expression. No doubt the pulse carbine suddenly feels very heavy in his grasp. Static bursts forth from Anders once more, and this time there's a pattern to it, a rhythm underlying the chaos. My brain strains, scrabbling at the edge of understanding. It's not just noise, it's a signal. "James!" I try again, the urgency tearing at my voice. "James, we need to get out of here, now!" He blinks, the spell finally breaking, but instead of obeying, he raises the pulse carbine, training the barrel directly at the thing that used to be Captain Anders. "James, what are you—" The room erupts in a blinding flash. The carbine roars, a staccato symphony of destruction. My ears ring. Smoke stings my eyes, and the coppery stench of atomized blood hangs in the air. When the haze clears, the thing that was Anders is gone. In its place lies a smoking, charred pile. It doesn't bring me any relief. If anything, it makes whatever horror is unfolding on this station far more real. My first instinct is to retch, but the failing respirator prevents even that small release. James stands over the smouldering remains, carbine still raised. His hands shake, breaths ragged within his helmet. "We gotta go," I manage to squeeze out. "Warn the others!" James nods jerkily. The transformation is startling. He's not just a soldier following orders anymore, but a man confronted with a terror that defies regulation and battlefield training. The corridors twist into a labyrinth of madness as we make our way back towards the bridge. The station's death throes grow louder with every step. Panels exploding in showers of sparks, the groans of overstressed metal reaching a fever pitch. Even the emergency lights sputter and fail, plunging us into a darkness punctuated by bursts of angry electrical discharge. It feels as if the station itself is becoming hostile, warping into a form dictated by the forces that tore through it. The orderly compartments and bulkheads of my familiar world are dissolving into a nightmare. When we reach the bridge, we're greeted by fresh chaos. Charles, Ryan, and a handful of surviving technicians huddle around a single console, fingers stabbing at keys like men possessed. The main hollow screens remain dark, mocking reminders of their futility. "What in blazes is going on?" I bellow, adrenaline momentarily cutting through the haze of dread. Charles spares me a glance. "Interference," he says, "jamming every damn frequency, our comms, navigation, the whole system's getting scrambled." From outside, an absurd hope surges within me. Maybe there's another ship. Maybe this is some kind of attack we can fight back against. Charles laughs, a sound devoid of humor. "From inside, Keller, it's like the station itself is turning against us." His eyes fixate on me, a spark of manic energy in them. Sector C, whatever Erickson unleashed, it's still here. I want to argue, to yell that he's lost his mind, but the warped corridor outside Anders's quarters flashes through my mind. Charles isn't mad. He's just stating the terrifyingly obvious. "Can you override it?" I force the question out, trying to maintain some semblance of control. "I'm bloody well trying," he snaps back, fingers flailing across the controls. "But this whole network's going haywire. I can't isolate the problem, let alone fix it." His words slam into me like a physical blow. No comms, no navigation, and now the very systems keeping us alive are failing. This isn't just a disaster, it's a meticulously planned execution. Suddenly, Ryan gasps, his body jerking upright. He hunches over the console, eyes locked on the display. "What is it?" Charles demands, stepping closer. Ryan's voice, usually so timid, cuts through the chaos. "Life support. It's back online." Hope flares briefly, only to be snuffed out. "That doesn't make any sense," I mutter, the words muffled by my helmet. Charles frowns, then his eyes widen in realization. "No, that's not life support." He steps away from the console, his movements strangely deliberate. "It's something else, something controlling the systems." And in the silence that follows, I understand. Erickson and his infernal experiments, they didn't just breach containment, they didn't just unleash destruction. They opened a door, and something walked through. A tremor ripples through the bridge, not the blunt shudder of structural collapse, but a subtle, insidious vibration. The surviving consoles around us begin to hum, not with electric power, but with something menacing. "Keller, behind you!" James's yell jolts me out of my horrified fascination. I spin, the motion clumsy in the restrictive suit. A bulkhead door, warped and bulging, has begun to inch open. Blackness seeps through the growing gap, a darkness that seems to drink in the dying light. "Block it! Block the damned thing!" Charles barks, scrambling towards a locker at the rear. My mind, still reeling, finally kicks into gear. I stumble forward, throwing my weight against the straining metal. James joins me, his bulk finally put to good use. For a moment we manage to stem the tide, but it's a losing battle. The blackness pushes against us, not with brute force, but with an awful, inevitable certainty. Then, the humming intensifies. The consoles around us vibrating like a swarm of angry bees. Ryan doubles over, clutching at his head. "Make it stop! It's inside! Make it stop!" His voice is a plea lost amidst the cacophony. "They're prying us open!" Charles spits, his face pale beneath the harsh lighting. He's hauled a heavy mag assembler from the locker. A tool meant for ship repairs, not for fighting. Whatever this is. We need to fall back, find a choke point. The door lurches, sending James and me sprawling. I land hard, pain shooting through my arm. Before I can scramble back, something flows through the gap. It isn't solid, more like a dense fog, tendrils of shadow that writhe and curl in the contaminated air. It touches me. The sensation is beyond cold, beyond pain. It's a void seeping into my bones. I scream, the sound muffled by my helmet as the shadows cling and consume. "Keller!" I hear, as if from far away. James is hauling me back, his grip surprisingly strong. Charles is laying suppressing fire, the mag assembler barking out bursts of energy that tear into the advancing tendrils. It's enough to buy us precious time. We stumble backwards, dragging a whimpering Ryan with us. The bridge is lost. The thing from Sector C is claiming it as its own. We reach a junction, and Charles slams a control panel, sealing a blast door behind us. It thuds into place, a final barrier. For a moment, there's just the heavy rasping of our respirators in the cramped corridor. Then, the banging begins. Not rhythmic, not mechanical, but a series of probing thumps against the metal. "We can't stay here," James gasps, his face a mask of terror. Charles nods. "Comms room! It's got fortified shielding, might block this signal." He gestures towards the sealed blast door. Whatever's on the other side is still pounding, testing the limits of its newfound domain. "And if it doesn't?" I ask. Charles meets my gaze, something resigned lurking in his eyes. "Then we die with guns in our hands. Better than getting..." He trails off, unable to put words to the fate worse than death I've witnessed. The comms room is a cramped island of sanity in an ocean of encroaching madness. Shielding meant to withstand solar flares crackles and hisses, the display panels sparking in protest. It feels less like a shield and more like a cage, the bars rattling against an unseen beast. We huddle together, a pathetic knot of fear in the humming half-light. Charles paces in short, jerky steps, the mag assembler clutched in his white-knuckled grip. Ryan sits crumpled on the floor, his mind a shattered thing. James stares at the sealed door, the pulse carbine ready, but his eyes harbour a lost, hunted look. "Keller." Charles's voice is strained, almost a croak. "Try tapping into an external system, a sat-link, an old-school probe, anything that's not tied to this damn network." "It's no use." I hear my own voice, hollow and distant. "Erickson. Whatever he was playing at, it contaminated everything inside the station's reach." The comms console sputters out static, and there's a figure amidst the chaos. It coalesces in the distorted display. Erickson. His face is a mask of bloodless pallor, but his eyes burn with a terrible light. It's him, or what's left of him. He's become a conduit for whatever force his reckless experiments unleashed. "You opened the door!" I managed to choke out, accusation and futile rage battling the despair rising within me. His reply is a fractured transmission, the words barely distinguishable amidst the electronic screech. "Bridge between realms. Power unconceived." "No more power for you!" Charles shouts, and then he fires. The mag assembler thunders, the concussive blast tearing through the display and leaving a scorched hole. The image of Erickson sputters and vanishes. Silence hangs heavy in that cramped room. Then Ryan begins to scream. It's a thin, keening sound that slices through the thrum of failing systems. He claws at his helmet, scrabbling to tear it off, as if the barrier of his suit is the source of his torment. "He's in my head!" Ryan shrieks. "Telling me! Showing me!" His voice breaks into whimpers. James moves then, swift and brutal. The rifle butt slams into the back of Ryan's helmet, silencing his cries with a thud. Charles and I share a glance. We both know it was a mercy killing. It's just a question of when whatever's driving the poor bastard mad turns its attention upon us. I'm going to the engine room, Charles states, his voice steadier now. Cut the power core. Try and starve this thing. My mind races, searching for any other option. There's nothing. I'll come with you, I offer. It's not a genuine proposition, more a need to keep moving, keep fighting while any fight remains. Charles looks at me with pity in his eyes. No, Keller. His voice is almost gentle. Someone needs to stay here. In case there's a chance, any chance to get a signal out. He's right. My stomach churns at the thought of being left alone in this cramped metal box, waiting for the inevitable. But there's a bitter logic to his words. Take this. Charles presses the mag assembler into my hands. The weight of it is comforting in a perverse sort of way. With a final nod, he's gone, swallowed by the corridors already thrumming with an alien sentience. And I'm left alone with the dead, the dying, and the steady pulse of the darkness beyond the sealed door. The comms room transforms. Shadows stretch and pool in impossible ways, divorcing themselves from the harsh angles of the equipment. I blink, trying to dispel the illusion, but it persists. The room itself is subtly warping, the bulkheads curving, the floor tilting ever so slightly. It's a sickening shift, making my stomach lurch and my head spin. Something is changing the very nature of the space around me. Ryan lies where he fell, but he's no longer alone. Dark shapes protrude from the walls like crude charcoal sketches given a perverse kind of life. They slither towards him, flowing over his prone form. When they reach his body, they don't attack in the conventional sense. They simply merge. Ryan jerks once, a spasm of both terror and obscene ecstasy. Then he's finally, mercifully, still. The shadows that consumed him retreat, as though sated for now, leaving behind nothing. Ryan is not dead. He's simply gone, erased from existence. No, I managed to whisper, the word tasting of bile and madness. This is what Erickson spoke of, power unconceived. It is a power that unmakes, consumes in a way that transcends mere death. It's a nightmare given form. The pressure of darkness against the shielded door grows stronger. I raise the mag assembler, my hands trembling on the grip. I know it's futile. A water pistol against an inferno. Yet, I'll not go down without a fight. The hum in the room shifts, becoming a discordant chorus of whispers. I can't understand them, but the intent is clear. It's probing the shields, searching for a weakness, mental as well as physical. Pain explodes behind my eyes, a sudden burst so intense that I cry out and collapse to my knees. The voices intensify. Images flash through my mind. The station engulfed in a roiling tide of darkness. Erickson's triumphant leer. The cold indifference of the stars that now seem so very close. I'm drowning in a psychic flood. The barriers of my mind crumbling under a relentless assault. Despair threatens to swallow me whole, to make me join the whispering chorus in the void. But then, a different voice cuts through the onslaught. It's weak, distorted but defiantly human. Keller. It's Charles, his voice tinny and filtered through the comms link. Keller. I failed. It's in the power core. It's everywhere. I try to respond, but my mouth refuses to form words. Static pours out of the speakers, smothering his fragmented transmission. There's one final sound, a hollow thud, then silence. The psychic pressure lessens, leaving me a shaking, whimpering wreck. My mind is a battlefield littered with the wreckage of shattered sanity. The assault has ended, but I know this is just a reprieve. Whatever resides in the heart of this dying station is merely toying with me, drawing out the inevitable. I think of Charles, Erickson, Ryan, their fates far worse than simple death, and a bleak realization settles over me. There will be no rescue, no final act of heroism. There's only this cramped room, the taste of madness, and the countdown to my own unmaking. Time loses all meaning. There's only the steady drone of warped machinery, the persistent whisper of shadows, and the knowledge cold and absolute that I'm the last one left. They try another tactic. I hear whispers of loved ones, voices from a past that now seems like a cruel fiction conjured up by a sadistic intelligence. The voices coax and cajole, offering visions of sunlight and warmth, of everything I crave and everything this dying station will never offer again. It's a clumsy trap, targeting the frayed remnants of my sanity. Yet, some brittle part of me finds enough strength to resist the siren song. I don't respond, refuse to give these things any purchase on my mind. Perhaps it's the silence that angers them. The shadows coalesce once more, swirling into crude, mocking imitations of human figures. They dance before me, their gestures a twisted parody of comfort and belonging. I close my eyes, denying them even that small victory. It's the waiting that breaks me. Not the darkness nor the isolation, but the relentless ticking of an invisible clock counting down to annihilation. I find myself staring at the sealed door, not with fear, but with a perverse sort of anticipation. Let it end. Anything is better than this limbo of half-existence. I hear the click before I feel it. A subtle shift in the warped metal of the door, a yielding to the relentless pressure. The comms console beside me crackles with a burst of static, and then a voice hisses forth, a sibilant whisper that slithers directly into my mind. Choice, it whispers. Service, unity, an end to struggle. Each word reverberates in my skull, a poisonous temptation. I understand then. These shadows, this intelligence that has consumed the station itself, it doesn't see me as an enemy, but as a potential recruit. Rage surges through me, hot and cleansing. It's not the noble anger of heroic defiance, but the fury of a trapped animal. My vision blurs with red. I raise the mag assembler, not to fire at the door, but at the comms console. I squeeze the trigger again and again, the deafening blasts tearing through the confined space. The distorted voice cuts off mid-word. Sparks shower from the ruined console and the warped shadows retreat. The comms room, for a blessed few moments, falls silent. Did I hurt them? Drive them back? Or is this another gambit in their twisted game? It doesn't matter. I slump against the warped bulkhead. The defiance fades, leaving me hollow to the core. There's nothing left. But even in that bleak void, some stubborn ember persists. I will not kneel to them. I will not join them. If the choice is between a mindless unity with darkness and oblivion, then I choose the latter. The sealed door groans. Metal screeches against metal as it begins to slide open. A shadow detaches itself from the inky void beyond, taking a hesitant step into the comms room. I brace myself for the inevitable onslaught, the final erasing of my existence. Instead, the shadow pauses. A long, quivering tendril reaches out from the darkness. Hesitantly, cautiously, it touches the shattered remnants of the comms console. Confusion surges through me, momentarily overwhelming despair. Then it hits me. The assault, the whispers, the temptations, they were tests. This intelligence, this vast consuming thing, was never simply about destruction. It has another purpose, some unfathomable design that my limited human mind struggles to grasp. My destruction was never the goal, but something worse, assimilation. The tendril recoils from the ruined console as if burned. The door slides shut with a final metallic thud, plunging me back into darkness. I sit in the silence, in the heart of this dying station turned tomb, and wonder, what have we unleashed? I lose track of time. Maybe it's hours, maybe days. I exist in a numb fugue. Every creak of metal, every hum of a fading system sends a jolt of terror through me. I expect the shadows to return to finish what they started, but they don't. When the rescue ship docks, it's almost anticlimactic. No explosions of violence, no psychic onslaught. Instead, there's a sharp hiss of depressurization, the groan of a docking clamp engaging, and then footsteps. The footsteps are cautious, the sound muffled by protective suits. They stop outside the comms room. I stare at the sealed door, wondering if the shadows will emerge one last time to protect what they now see as theirs. "Keller, is anyone in there?" The voice is distorted through the speakers but vaguely familiar. Someone from Central Command, probably. I try to answer, to call out, but nothing but a choked croak emerges from my dry throat. There's the hiss of a mag cutter slicing into metal. Then an explosion of light as they breach the seal. I shield my eyes, blinking against the painful brilliance after so long in the gloom. "Sir, he's alive!" Someone is kneeling beside me, their face obscured by the reflective visor of their helmet. I manage to nod, a pathetic, jerky motion. They help me to my feet. My legs wobble and tremor, too long unused to standing. As they support me out of the comms room, I take one last look at the ruined equipment, the lingering shadows that cling to the warped bulkheads. They don't move, don't react as we pass. It's a small comfort, nothing more. The corridors are a graveyard. Bodies lie contorted where they fell, some partially consumed by the creeping darkness. My rescuers, a grizzled veteran named Sergeant Rick and a rookie tech named Sam, move with practiced efficiency. They check the bodies quickly, not with any hope of finding survivors, but for ID tags, data slates, any clue as to what unfolded here. "What happened, Keller?" Rick asks, helmet lights pinning me in their harsh glare. I try to speak, but the words catch in my throat. It's more than exhaustion. It's the knowledge that any explanation would sound like a madman's ravings. "Sector C," I croak. "Erickson, something got out." Rick grunts. "We know about that much. Comms went dark. Scans showed catastrophic power fluctuations originating from the labs. Then, nothing. Thought we were dealing with a simple containment breach." He shakes his head, his disgust evident. We reach the docking bay just as a secondary team arrives, medics in tow. They bustle me aside, their professional efficiency jarring against the horrors I've witnessed. I try to protest, to tell them they don't understand, that there's more. But Sam gives me a reassuring squeeze on the shoulder. "It's over, sir," he says, his voice surprisingly gentle. "You're safe now." I submit to the medics' ministrations, their injections and murmured commands. The haze of sedatives descends, a welcome mercy. As the station shrinks into the distance, I watch through blurring eyes. The rescue ship thrums with life, with normalcy. Yet I now see its corridors and humming machinery with new eyes. The systems that keep us alive seem fragile, tenuous shields against a vast, uncaring darkness. Quarantine is a gilded cage. The room is sealed, the airlock cycling with a claustrophobic hiss every time someone enters. Med droids buzz around tirelessly, taking samples, monitoring vitals. Yet they offer little comfort. Their efficiency feels more like surveillance. First few days are disorienting. I sleep, or a drug-induced imitation of it, in fitful bursts punctuated by nightmares. When I'm awake, I stare at the ceiling, replaying fragments of the station's fall. The shadows, the whispers, the touch of something alien. It's on the fourth day, after I finally manage a full meal and a trembling walk around the room, that they come for me. "Keller, it's time for your debrief," says the voice crackly over the room speakers. I recognize it. Admiral Edward, the highest-ranking officer in the sector. A man who, under normal circumstances, I'd only see pixelated on a screen. They dress me in a clean jumpsuit, the flimsy fabric feeling alien against my skin, and escort me through a series of corridors to a conference room. One look confirms my suspicions. This isn't merely a debriefing. Edward sits at the head of the table, his face carved from granite. Flanking him are specialists from various departments, a grim-faced security officer, a scientist with eyes that are too alert, and a man in a plain grey suit who exudes an aura of bureaucratic power. I recognize none of them. They seat me opposite Edward. The overhead lights are relentlessly bright, stripping me of whatever privacy I might have thought I had left. A recording drone hovers in the center of the room, its single red lens fixated on me. "Mr. Keller," Edward begins, his voice clipped and devoid of any warmth. "We understand this is a difficult situation, but your testimony is vital." I nod, trying to suppress a shudder. "Where do you want me to start, sir?" "The beginning." The scientist, a Dr. Henrik if his ID badge is to be believed, interrupts. "The initial incident with the containment breach. Describe the nature of the experiment, the energy readings, any unusual phenomena." I detail Ericsson's work, trying to stick to technical terminology and avoid speculation. He was tampering with dark matter interactions, searching for a new energy source. I speak of unexpected radiation spikes, strange patterns in the readings. Even as I recount it, I know how inadequate my words are. "But what came out?" Henrik presses, his eyes gleaming with a manic intensity. "What did you see on the station?" Irritation ripples through me. "There weren't any creatures, if that's what you're expecting," I say, keeping my voice level with an effort. "It wasn't like that." "Then like what?" Edward cuts in, his impatience evident. I hesitate, searching for words that can convey the pervasive wrongness, the sentience that consumed everything. It was a presence," I begin, and immediately wish I hadn't. The man in the grey suit leans forward, the very picture of smarmy concern. "Mr. Keller, are you suggesting some form of extraterrestrial intelligence?" "It wasn't extraterrestrial," I insist. "The energy signatures were all wrong. It came from inside, through Ericsson's experiment. It changed things, the station itself." Silence falls over the room. It's broken by Edward's heavy sigh. "Keller, I appreciate your service, but what you're describing sounds unbelievable." "It's hard to believe," I say, my voice rising, "but it's real. It consumed the station, it killed everyone, and it was going to—" My voice trails off. I was going to say it was going to use me, but the idea sounds absurd even to my own ears. Edward and the man in the suit exchange glances. I see it in their eyes, plain as day. They think I'm losing it. "Keller," Edward begins, his voice taking on a patronizing tone, "perhaps we should continue this another day. You've been through a traumatic ordeal." I rise to my feet, the chair screeching against the floor. "No! We're going to continue this now!" I glare at each of them in turn. "You want to cover your asses, write this off as some accident, but the truth is, out there somewhere, there's a darkness that almost swallowed us whole, and if we ignore it, it's damn well gonna do it again." My outburst is met with stony silence. It's Henrik who finally speaks. "Let's give Mr. Keller the benefit of the doubt," he says, his tone unsettlingly calm. "Perhaps rest and a specialized examination will shed further light on these events." They're going to lock me away, label me unstable. My outburst has sealed my fate. The quarantine cell transforms. It's no longer merely a prison, but a sanctuary. The harsh glare of the overhead lights becomes conducive to the swirling dance of shadows in my restless sleep. The hum of the med droids blends seamlessly into the whispering litany in my dreams. They try to dismiss it as PTSD, the ravings of a broken man. Henrik, with his ever-watchful eyes, prescribes sedation, sleep therapy, anything to dull what he calls trauma-induced hallucinations. He doesn't understand. It's worse than hallucinations. It's a curse. I dream of stations I've never visited, mining platforms on barren asteroids, research outposts on the fringes of charted space, and always the same creeping infection, shadows slithering from vents, machinery twisting into impossible shapes, and distant screams lost in a sea of static. I wake in a cold sweat, the choking fear a noose around my sanity. At first, the dreams are scattered, the names unfamiliar. Then, 2 weeks into my confinement, a news bulletin crackles over the room's speakers. Unconfirmed reports of a malfunction at the Orpheus 5 mining platform. Comms blackout. Fears of a catastrophic containment breach. Orpheus 5. The very name haunts my nightmares. My pleas to the guards, my frantic pounding on the door fall on deaf ears. They dismiss it as the ravings of a madman. Then, 3 days later, it's confirmed. Orpheus 5 is lost. The official report citing a chain reaction in the core that vaporized the station in a blinding flash. No survivors. They look at me differently after that. Fear creeps into their eyes alongside the pity. Henrik's visits become more frequent, his examinations more invasive. They search not just for the damage inside my head, but for the source of my foresight. Edward summons me to another meeting. This time, the interrogation room is filled with strangers, scientists, military types, even a man with the sharp eyes of an intelligence officer. They treat me with apprehension and predatory interest. Keller, Edward begins, leaning forward. You need to tell us everything. How do you see these events? What patterns do you observe? Anger wars with a desperate need to be believed. You won't like my answers, I snap. The pattern is simple. Erickson didn't just open a door to another dimension, he brought something back. It's spreading, feeding on the very systems meant to protect us. Their expressions are a mix of skepticism and unease. It's the intelligence officer, a thin-lipped man named Carver, who speaks. So, a contagion of sorts. A psychic virus, perhaps? He's closer to the truth than they realize. That's the horror of it. The darkness on that station wasn't just energy. It was aware. We need to isolate it, someone mutters, a scientist with nervous, darting eyes. Find its point of origin. Quarantine entire sectors if necessary. Carver shakes his head. No good. Keller is our only canary in the coal mine. We keep him here, study him. If this presence of yours has a pattern, we can use him to predict attacks. Save lives. My stomach churns with revulsion. They want to use me, turn me into a weapon. They don't understand. This isn't about saving lives. It's about a fight we're already losing. But I am alone, trapped in a nightmare with no end in sight. And so I become their oracle, deciphering the patterns of spreading darkness. They confine me to a lab, a perverse mockery of Erickson's work. I chart star maps, analyze comms logs, my haunted dreams offering foresight. Each vision, each disaster I see coming feels like another nail hammered into my coffin. It's not just my mind that is tainted, but my very soul. Some nights, amidst the whispers and the shadows of my confinement, I dream of the station. Not of its fall, but of what came after. I dream of a vast web of darkness spanning the cold void, the tendrils reaching towards distant stars, towards Earth. And with chilling certainty, I know that it is not a dream. It's a prophecy, and I am destined to bear witness to its fulfillment.